So here it is. We're looking at this chapter now. I like the way you ended. I want to start at the end because you're cautioning us not to cross the threshold of manipulation in order to get done what we'd like to get done. And so what this chapter is to show us how to persuade and how to influence so that mutually we see the benefit of the request that is being taken. So where do we start in this? Because we can get it so wrong.
Indeed. And I'll start where you started at the end. And the distinction between influence and persuasion versus manipulation is your intent. And I'm going to use an example from geopolitics to illustrate the point. So with Donald Trump's first impeachment, it was about the conversation he had with the Ukrainian prime minister. And remember, he made aid, which had been approved by Congress, contingent on his counterpart doing certain things that would redound to Trump's personal benefit.
Mm-hmm.
That's manipulation. Okay?
Yes.
Because by making it contingent, he was like, if you do this, then you will get this benefit. No, that's manipulation. Let me contrast that now with reciprocity, which is a principle of influence and persuasion that is completely legitimate, above board, without any malice or manipulative intent. When the Wuhan epidemic started, this is before we were at pandemic stage. At the point in time, the coronavirus was localized to Wuhan, China. And Trinidad and Tobago, right here in the Caribbean, one of our CARICOM brothers and sisters,
yes,
they sent a shipment of supplies to China to assist them in the context of the pandemic. Now, within a matter of months, it was declared a pandemic. It was affecting all over the world, including Trinidad and Tobago. And if you can cast your mind back to then, you remember there was a shortage of personal protective equipment. There was a shortage of tests, etc. And what China did was that it sent a whole container to Trinidad with, thermometers, tests, protective equipment, etc. What we see at work there is the principle of reciprocity. Trinidad did what it did without requiring anything in return. It was an altruistic gesture, a gesture of goodwill. When Trinidad was affected, China remembered that their partner had done something for them and they reciprocated. So you see the difference there between what Trump did, which was manipulation, and what Trinidad and Tobago did was exercise the principle of reciprocity, so it came back to their benefit in due course.
A lesson for all of us in leadership to note, indeed. And what we're looking at today, folks, is not in isolation. Remember, we're looking at managing others, and we would have started this section looking at building trust. Trust is such a critical component of every single thing we do. Building relationships, understanding situational leadership and the like, and the art of delegation. So if we're going to look at practice the art of delegation, we're naturally going to be practicing how to persuade and influence. And so let's break it down, because in the chapter, you've looked at some key points we need to pay attention to when we are persuading and influencing others to take an action, to help us in the task, because it's a journey that we're sharing together. We talked about reciprocity just now, but you started it by looking at liking. Why is that important?
Listen, it's human nature. We have people that we're like, we're more inclined to do stuff for them.
Yes.
Right? So, and once we become a leader, it's important for us to take the time to get to know people. So that's why we had the relationship building chapter some time ago. And remember, we said people are not just units of production.
That's right.
So if we want to cultivate relationships, if we want people to like us, we have to, and remember with trust, we have to be benevolent towards people. And one of the ways that you can build liking is by finding things that you have in common with people, because that's how human nature works. We relate better to people with whom we can identify, people with whom we have something in common. And how are you going to know if you have things in common with people if you don't talk to them? Not just talk to them about the work, but talk to them about themselves as people.
Hmm.
You know, engage their humanity and show them your humanity. Because when people like you, they will go the distance on your behalf, sometimes without your even having to ask. They
So
will
true.
volunteer. They will give you that discretionary effort. However, if what you're getting from your people is compliance because they can't stand you and they're only doing what you say because they have to, it's a different dynamic altogether.
Yeah, you're so right. And don't think for a second, folks, that you will get it right every time. That it's having liked me now that you will like me forever. You know, it's a work of art right the way through all the time, but you must be consistent and not to fake it. Honesty is absolutely critical when it comes to building this relationship. Reciprocity we just spoke about. Scarcity is another area that can also help us to exercise our influence and exercise our persuasive skill sets as well. So, for those listening
Yes.
who are thinking, but scarcity? What are you talking about? What are you talking about?
Okay, so I'll give you an example. I just launched a new leadership development program. It's for women, so that's why you didn't hear about it. It's
Mm.
called Caribbean Women Rising. And the program targets professional women who, after high velocity escalation in their careers, they're stalled now. They feel stuck. So they may have been in the same position for a while. They no longer feel challenged. They no longer feel fulfilled. So through this leadership development program, I help them to get unstuck. There's some things they need to stop doing and some things they need to start doing in order to get unstuck. So how did I use scarcity with that? When I started promoting it, I said there's limited availability for
Ah,
placement in this program. Okay. So that helped to stimulate the demand for it and to get people to respond quickly because they didn't want to miss out on the opportunity of being in the historic first cohort of Caribbean Women Rising.
using the right words, capitalizing on all of that.
Yep. So that's scarcity.
Ah,
There's only one first cohort and there are only a limited number of spaces in this historic first cohort.
yes, but you can't wing your way through that though. Again, because if the result is not what you promised at the beginning to say to me, well, there's only one cohort, then I will have questions about you going forward. Again, trust, and I keep coming back because we're talking still about relationships all the way through
Yep.
everything we're doing, building and developing trust as we go. And so, if you're going to be honest and say, listen, we have a need here, and there's only so much that whatever the case may be, but you have to be honest with me. Don't lie to me. Because if I caught you your lie, you can't have my
Exactly.
trust anymore at all.
Right. And
And
so
then,
that, I could
yeah,
pick up on that because that goes back to the manipulation. But it
yes.
also brings us to two of the other principles of persuasion and influence.
Hmm.
And one is authority,
Yes.
and the other is social proof.
Yes.
So let's start with the social proof. So, I mean, my grandmother used to say, fishermen never say their fish stink, right? So, if you want to know if the fish is good, don't ask the fisherman, ask the people who eat in the fish from the fisherman.
Yes.
And so, with social proof to persuade and influence, that's when you get people to give you referrals, when you get them to do testimonials for you. So, in promoting that program, I had past coaching clients, I had past corporate clients speak about the impact that I had had on their organizations or on them personally in my prior engagements with them. So that as I, create the scarcity, I have the social proof that said not only is this scarce, it's good,
Hmm.
right? Then with that, you put authority. So I have to show that, listen, I'm qualified to do the things that I'm saying that I can do. So then I would talk about my certification, my qualifications, etc. So to persuade and influence is not just one of the principles on its own, but it's how you put them together to get the overall impact that you're looking
Absolutely, son. So, but consistency will also be a critical factor in all of this as well. So there's so much to it. It's
for.
not as
Yes.
simple as saying, oh well, I can persuade, I can influence. No, there's a technique to doing so, and there has to be greater understanding, therefore, of what we do and what we are required to do so that we get people to work with us and through us and us through them as well, which is so very vital, a chapter that people in positions of management and supervision need to pay attention to as well as we go, because the element of the social proof, you can't get there until you've put in some of the other work before that. I'm not going to speak positive of you and my experience with you unless we have built all of the other bits and pieces that are required as well. So it can't be taken for granted and it can't be forced. That's, I think, is also important. You can't force it. It takes time. But you should take the time to get to that point indeed, because to like you takes time. And I like you already, Joe, from the beginning. That happened so immediately. It was not funny. It's almost as if, kindred spirits met. And that's so critical. It makes the task a whole lot easier to get people to do something. It makes it so much easier, but we got to spend the time. And you've been consistent. I'm just critiquing you, if you don't mind my social proofing, and you've been consistent all the way through. The same smile every Wednesday morning we meet, the same interest in the subject every morning we meet, the same kernels of truth that we get with you every single Wednesday morning we meet, and the same outcome, a positive outcome I get with you every single Wednesday morning of the week. And so, it's just so ironic because what's today, Wednesday? Monday, one of those who report to me came to my office to share some information. And you know what? The first thing I did? I reached for the book. I said, there's a chapter in here that I'd like you to share with you. And it was about giving and receiving feedback. Because she came to me, she said, there was something that one of her reports did that she thought was so wonderful. I said, and did you give feedback? Did you praise? Did you whatever? When did you do so? Have you considered where it was that you did all of that? I said, well, look, this chapter helps you with those kinds of things. And it was such a joy for me to be able to say that. And I think for a lot of people viewing this morning, it can be your joy too by getting the book. Get the book. It is a must-have indeed. It's called Manager's First Aid Kit.